Hey, what's going on, everyone? Nick here with Shane to talk about the Batman. Spoiler free. Shane, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm better now that I've seen the Batman.
Yeah. For you watching, I texted Shane to see when he's seeing it, and he's like, "This just happened a couple minutes ago, or hours ago, rather." And he sent me a picture of him with the Batman logo and the screen poster behind him. Said that he's seen it. I said, "Cool. Let's do a little spoiler-free video." Thus, here we are. I'm seeing it on Friday right after work at 6 p.m. in AMC Dolby. I cannot wait. I am super, super hyped about it. A buddy of ours, who used to do videos on the channel, Corey as well. He had said that he saw it last night,
Oh
and
yes,
his
we texted
his
a lot about
I'm
it.
sure you guys did, and he just responded. He texted me saying, "Holy fuck,"
Yeah.
and I was like, thinking in my head just as a joke, the Han Solo, like, that bad, huh? After he got out of carbonite, obviously it's not bad at all. So this is going to be a spoiler-free video.
Yep.
I'm going to ask Shane a couple questions, and then we'll go from there. So the first question I want to ask, which is probably the biggest elephant in the room, how does this compare to The Dark Knight?
Yeah. So it's different. I don't think it's as good as The Dark Knight because it's nearly impossible to be as good as that movie. I think that is just an incredible movie.
Right.
But it finds its own way and is really, really effective in doing so. Uh, the thing I think found the most interesting about this movie is, for years everyone has said like the Nolan Batman films are like when they took superhero movies darker, right?
Right.
And like everyone's been trying to catch up to, making it darker and stuff like
Right.
that. This is even darker than the Nolan movies, like
Nice.
significantly so. It is very creepy. It is very emo. It is very like grungy. Like Nirvana plays in the movie. Like not on screen, but like the song plays in the
Love it.
movie.
Love it.
So it is very like Seattle grunge, like early 2000s emo type of vibe, and I loved every second of it. It was great.
Amazing. Yeah. And I know that was sort of my thought going into it. And I almost proposed to myself saying, I'll watch the Batman on Friday and then I'll wait till Saturday, watch the Dark Knight. So I'll give it time to sink in a little bit more and think about it and talk with, you guys that have seen it already. And then kind of make my comparison then, and I'm not trying to, again, think that this movie isn't going to come close to it, because I know people are going to have their, opinions and say it's just as good. And again, I agree with you though. Like, that movie, The Dark Knight, is just, it's 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 more than just a Batman movie because
Yeah,
of the Joker. And I kind of made this comparison too, with saying where someone were like Heath Ledger as an actor who didn't really get a true chance to shine in a role like the Joker. Prior to the Joker, like, he'd been in A Knight's Tale, 10 Things I Hate
right.
About You.
Yeah.
Like, these movies are like, what is Christopher Nolan thinking casting him as this role of the Joker, right? Where someone like Jack Nicholson, portrayed him, years ago in the first Batman movie, and just seeing him, like, there's no way Heath can do that. Then we saw him, we're like, what the fuck, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's the same case as like Robert Pattinson, which will lead me to my next question, because I know he's been stereotyped to death and typecasted to death with being in Harry
Twilight.
Potter and then the
Yeah.
Twilight series, which I've never seen the Twilight movies because I refuse to see
I've seen the
them.
first one. I haven't
Okay.
seen anything past that.
I mean, obviously, like, I've seen the Harry Potter movies, numerous times,
Yep.
and I he's only in one of them, of course, but he dies. Spoiler. Uh, but
Dropping
yeah,
Cedric
drop it.
Diggory
Oh,
spoilers
shit,
on
there is
this.
a
Come
Cedric Diggory
on.
spoiler. Damn it. But I've seen him in a couple other movies since then, right?
Yep.
Like, um,
Lighthouse.
Lighthouse, great movie with him and Willem
Tenet.
Dafoe.
Yep.
I just watched The King with him
Okay.
and Timothy Chalamet that
Yep.
came out a couple years ago, but was now on Netflix. So great. I thought it was great in that. Um, There is the movie, another movie he was on with Tom Holland on Netflix. I think called was it like the Devil You Know, or The Devil Within, something like that. But
Okay. I haven't seen that
um,
one.
just this Southern accent. I'm like, he can act. Like he can
Oh, he
definitely
can.
act. And so, how is his portrayal as both Bruce Wayne and Batman in this movie? Again, obviously, I know you
Yes.
can't say as much, but
Right. No, it's interesting. So, like we talked about comparing it to The Dark Knight,
right,
and really, this is a very different Bruce Wayne than you've seen kind of in the live action movies before. In the past, Bruce Wayne was always kind of like James Bond. Like he's very like, high class,
right,
like gadgety and like all this stuff. And this is like depressed scene kid Bruce Wayne. And I think Robert Pattinson pulls that off brilliantly. Like
right.
for all of the people saying like he can never be Batman, once you see this version of Batman, it's hard to think of any other actor as Bruce Wayne than Robert Pattinson. Like he pulls it off so well, almost like it almost reminded me of Twilight a little bit, which is going to sound bad, but like when you think of like how moody and like kind of brooding he is in the Batman, it kind of makes sense. It kind of tracks. Like when Reeves was writing this movie, he's like, I need the most emo actor possible who's like a high name. Like you immediately would have thought of Robert Pattinson. Like it is like perfectly cast. It's brilliant. I think he does a great job. He shows some good emotional range throughout the movie. He is very like dark and dreary throughout, but he pulls off that like almost like the Ryan Gosling like just staring at you kind of feeling like
Okay,
in Drive. You know
right.
how Ryan Gosling just kind of stands there looking and like
Yeah,
it's great. It's like that. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that where he's just giving you like the scowl and you're like,
right.
okay, this is it. I like it.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. I mean, again, even just from the trailer, or trailers that have dropped, I liked what I saw in those trailers. And
Mhm.
um, I understand this is him as a younger, Bruce Wayne, younger Batman. Whereas most of what we've seen in the past has always been, a more grown up, and I'm not going to quite say figured out Batman, but I know a
Yeah.
lot of people will always compare him to either Michael Keaton,
Yep.
uh, Christian Bale,
Yep.
and most recently,
Ben Affleck.
Batfleck. So, and I know, for the sake of people saying, "Well, who's your favorite?" Because that's a big common question these
Yeah.
days. And a lot of people will either say one of those three characters, or three actors rather. Um, where do you think Pattinson stands in like the melting pot of Batmans?
So this is going to be a cop out answer,
It's okay.
but I don't tend to pick my favorite Bruce Wayne based on like you know who fits the type as much. Like compare like a lot of people didn't like Christian Bale as Batman because like, oh, it's not Bruce Wayne, but it's like he fit the character in that movie very well, and I think he
Yeah.
did a good job at that.
Yeah.
This is kind of the same thing where it's like this is telling a certain Batman story, and that story is like you said, early Batman still figuring it out, just getting started and trying to figure out like what is his place in Gotham? What is he supposed to be doing? And like how is he supposed to be doing this? And that's the central question behind the film is like, is what he's doing effective? Is there a better way of doing this, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
It's similar to like the theme in the Nolan trilogy where it's like Batman is a symbol, where he kind of threads that through all three movies. This is not the same theme, but it's asking that central question of like, what does it mean to be this masked hero vigilante? And I think it's really interesting, and he plays it really well. And you can see kind of throughout the movie how the answers to those questions kind of adapt, or he adapts to the answers to those questions and changes his behavior and et cetera, et cetera. So
Gotcha.
it's a pretty compelling little story. And it's also an origin story without being one, which I think is really nice. Like we don't see the murders of his parents, which is
Thank
not a
God.
spoiler. That's already been kind of out there. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
they've already
thankfully.
talked about how they don't want to just retread that. But it's still an origin story in that he is, being Batman and trying to figure it out.
That's good to know. And I know I've read some, again, spoiler free things about uh, how this relates to the comics, and and then like another comparison was the Nolan trilogy too, because that didn't follow the comics a lot either.
No,
Like they deviated quite a bit from the comics on certain stances. Obviously, they included a lot too that was similar, but um, like for instance, Batman Begins, there's a lot that does has nothing to do with the comics. And I'm not a super uh, knowledgeable Batman comic fan. Like I have a few series, as you were saying off screen. I know people that are very knowledgeable with Batman comics and can bring up a lot of actual points of what makes sense, or what's actually pulled from the comics and what hasn't been. But what are your thoughts on that with this movie, if anything?
yeah, so I'm not a comic book reader for Batman. However, I did poke around on like the DC like subreddits and forums after, just to see
Hmm.
how kind of that fan base was taking it, because there's always sort of a dichotomy with comic book movies where it's
Of
like you've
course.
got your movie buffs who like it in a certain way, and then
Yep.
you go over to the comic book side of thing and it's like, oh, they didn't do this right, they didn't do this right. And surprisingly, uh the comic fans seem to love it. There is a very positive response from all of the comic forums that I was on. Apparently it tracks very closely to kind of how he is in the comics. One thing that I read is that I found interesting in the movie is that Batman actually narrates parts of the movie, and I
Oh,
guess in the
interesting.
comics he narrates a lot. It kind of reminds
Yeah.
me, and this is like full circle. If you've seen Watchmen, Rorschach narrating, it's very similar to that style of narration, which I believe Rorschach was actually based off of Batman originally, like when the comic came out. And he was
Okay.
supposed to be kind of like that Batman archetype. So it kind of makes sense that like it's come full circle and like this is kind of like Batman in his like purest form, quote unquote. But
Gotcha.
it also, there's your typical Batman characters. Like, especially if you've seen the Nolan movies and then you see this one, it's like you're going to recognize a lot of the names and a lot of the characters in it, just because that's kind of Batman's, you know, all the villains around Batman.
Right.
Um, you're going to see a lot of that. Um, but I think it was, really interesting. Really, the most interesting thing about this movie, and this is not really related to the comics, this is just me going on a tangent, is that, and maybe it is a little bit, but it's a detective movie. It's
Good.
it's
That's
if you
good though.
made it's if you made a David Fincher Batman movie, like that is what it feels like. If you've seen like Seven, or if you've seen Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yep.
It's like that if it was a Batman movie. And I
Okay.
found that super interesting. Like there's action in the movie, but it's not a lot. Like this is not big grand action set piece type of Batman.
Right.
This is there's a serial killer on the loose. He's leaving us a bunch of clues and we got to figure it out. And I found that super compelling and kind of different. It's weird to see this big budget Batman movie that's kind of restrained a little bit. It's a lot of talking in rooms and figuring out clues. And I find that really interesting. And that's really his role in the comics, right?
Yep.
He's more of a detective. He
Yeah.
doesn't have superpowers. He's using his abilities to be smart. And I thought that was super interesting to see on screen.
Yeah. A lot of people think that you well, I should say comic book readers will know that Batman started off it was Detective Comics. Like
Yeah,
there was nothing, grand or very action oriented with Batman. Like yes, he fought criminals, but that's just the thing. He fought criminals, other human beings, not aliens from a different world or
yeah,
or universe, right? Like
yeah,
he's not a meta, he doesn't have a meta power, right? So yeah, you look at the Flash or Wonder Woman or Superman, like yeah, those are all gonna have some sort of action behind them because they're just so OP or have some sort of
right. Yeah,
you know skill base to them. Batman, Bruce Wayne is just this genius, well thought out character, and I'm actually really happy to hear that because
yeah,
uh again, it kind of just and I guess my quick opinion would be like if this is more directed towards acting in general and like having a good actual story and good
Mhm.
storytelling, then it should make for a great movie. And obviously, like what by what you're saying, it is. So
Yeah, it's a film noir, basically. It's very
right.
dark. You see I don't think there's a single scene in broad daylight. It's either like
Oh wow.
sunrise or night or rainy.
All right.
I can't think of one at least. Maybe a few, but most of these scenes are like it's raining and it's dark and there's a bunch of shadows and
I mean,
maybe
Gotham
like
City
one
does
flash of
suck,
light.
so
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
gonna be like this. Like it's not Metropolis, basically.
right.
So
Yeah, it's definitely playing the atmosphere of being, brutal and gritty. And yeah, it's Robert Pattinson riding a motorcycle through the rain while Nirvana plays.
love
That's
it. Can't
that's
wait.
this movie.
Can't wait to hear and see that. Couple of last quick questions. Of the what do you think of the villains, and what do you think of the supporting characters? Well, obviously like Alfred, Commissioner Gordon,
Yep.
Penguin, Riddler.
So Riddler is excellent. Paul Dano does a terrific job. His introduction is awesome and chilling, and I
Nice.
won't give anything more away than that. But we'll talk about it in the spoiler review because
Yes,
that
for
was a
sure.
scene that stood out to me.
Okay.
Um, but he does a great job. He's very just kind of creepy looking kind of in real life, and so
Yeah.
like he's perfectly cast for that role. Oh, he's so great. I joked with Corey that like his origin story is not getting into flight school because he's colorblind. This is his Little Miss Sunshine sequel.
Oh, great. Love it.
That's
Love it.
um but no, he's awesome in it. Um he's not the Joker because that's like a historic performance. But he does do a really good job. Um Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman is very good and also a standout in the movie.
Mm.
It's weird seeing the Penguin. What's his name? Uh,
Oh, wow. Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. Thank you. It's weird seeing him in all that makeup because like the top half of his face, you can totally tell it's him, but then the
Hmm.
bottom half it is not. And there's certain scenes where it's like, oh, there's Colin Farrell, and then the rest of them where it's like, oh, it looks nothing like him. Uh,
Where'd he go?
but he's good as the Penguin. There's some other roles in there that I'm not sure if they're spoilery or not, but there's actors you'll recognize as other characters. Uh, this one's not a spoiler. Jeffrey Wright is
Gordon.
Gordon, and he does a
Yeah.
great job in that role. But there's a couple other characters in there that you'll probably recognize from other things. But I'm not really sure. They weren't in the trailer, so I don't really want to say too much. Um,
Right.
because I literally only watched the trailer before I saw this, and I wanted to keep it as clean as possible.
Right. Right.
Uh, but yeah, the performances are all good. The score is very good.
Okay. Yep.
It's very simple though, which is interesting. It's kind of based on a couple of different motifs that kind of get varied throughout the movie. One is like the opening song of the movie, which is actually Ave Maria, and so that the score is actually kind of based loosely around that song.
Ave
Uh,
Maria. What song is that?
Ave
Oh,
Maria.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
You're welcome, listeners. You got to hear me
Yep.
sing Ave Maria. so, but yeah, there's a lot of like themes that Michael Giacchino plays off of
Okay.
that, and then he also plays off of the Nirvana song as well. Um, and then you've got your Batman theme, and that's kind of leitmotif throughout. Like every time Batman kind of pops up, you hear the bomb, bomb, bomb. It's kind of like Darth Vader. That's a good
Gotcha.
comparison for Batman in this movie. It's like
Darth
Darth
Vader's
Vader,
theme. Okay.
yeah, just like stalking people.
Okay.
Uh, Pretty good.
So how is Andy Serkis as Alfred?
He's good. I wouldn't say he's a standout. There's a couple scenes where he does really well emotionally. Um, but he's not in the movie terribly much,
Okay.
which is interesting given that it's like a 3-hour movie. I would say he probably has under 15 minutes of screen time.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
And so it's very much more of a Batman movie. And Catwoman's pretty heavily featured as well.
Yeah, which makes sense. And there was one thing I did hear. Um, I believe this is very comparable or has comparisons uh, from the Long Halloween,
I have not
which
read
uh,
it.
it well, it's all they also animated it, which I
Okay.
think it's still on HBO, HBO Max. I watched not too long ago. It's two parts, and Catwoman is very heavily involved in that as well. Um, and I'm not going to get into that, but
I will
that was
say
great.
the movie opens in Halloween, so maybe.
Yeah, there again, like I didn't want to read too much because like I
Yeah,
know what happens in the Long Halloween, so I'm like,
gotcha. Yep.
yeah, no, I'll probably just stop reading here. But again, the Long Halloween was great. So I do think just knowing that, I'm like kind of hyping myself up even more. So, but yeah, I honestly can't wait. So I'm stoked to see it in a couple days, and then we'll be able to talk spoiler free, and then everyone will hopefully have seen it by then over this
Yes.
weekend.
It's
Um,
you should be very excited to see this, especially if you're watching this. Definitely go see it.
yes,
If you're comfortable, definitely go see it in a theater. The sound design and mixing is very strong. I
Oof.
saw it in an IMAX theater, and there were a couple scenes where the bass is just going crazy. Um, and I won't spoil which scenes, just so that you can experience them for yourself.
Right.
But it is a very technically sound movie. Greg Fraser does a great job as cinematographer. The direction is great. I love Matt Reeves' earlier stuff. I loved both of his Planet of the Apes movies and
Yeah.
Cloverfield. And I really had no doubt that this would deliver based on his track record. If he can make a compelling epic about CGI apes, he can kind of do anything, right?
You could definitely
And
do that
he
at that point.
delivers in spades here. I will say my only real critique about this movie is like the last hour kind of drags. It's
Okay.
The first 2 hours flew by for me, and then like it felt like the movie kind of peaks, and then like the last hour, it's like trying to wrap everything up and set stuff up for the sequels that are already kind of planned. And it kind of dragged down the pacing a little bit. I think maybe a couple more re-edits of sort of the last 20-ish minutes would have helped the film a lot.
Okay.
Um, but I wouldn't let that really detract from my overall thoughts on the movie. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Good. No post credit scene, right?
There's a very slight one, but it's very cryptic. It's like a what like augmented reality type thing where it's like a website kind of thing. So
Interesting.
it's not
Uh,
something you have to like stick around and
Okay.
need it for the next one or something.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Good to know. Yeah, and I was going to ask if it ended with a way of setting something up for the future and what
Yes.
that would mean for Robert Pattinson,
Yes.
continuing to portray this role. So,
It very much sets up the next one. I will say it doesn't have the kind of like emphatic Christopher Nolan narration, like Big Bang ending that he's known for, and
right.
it felt a little bit flat by comparison.
Interesting.
Because like every Christopher Nolan movie, the end of the movie is like a montage. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'm reciting the themes of the movie to the
Yeah.
audience out loud, and then it cuts and it shows the Dark Knight.
Yeah. It's like, yeah,
Our
like,
watchful protector.
yeah, like, yeah, like
It
Gordon's
doesn't do
narrating
that.
the end. Yeah. Okay.
And, like, I that's such a Nolan specific thing,
Totally.
that, like, it felt a little bit missing in this, but, like, that's maybe an unfair comparison because like, that is what Nolan is best at. Better than
Right.
anyone else in the industry is, like, ending on this, like, 2-minute awesome montage where you're like, "Oh, hell yeah." But,
100%. Yeah.
uh
Nolan's great at that. So,
But yes,
uh,
I still really enjoyed it. I think people are really gonna like it, and I think it's gonna do really well at the box office. Considering there's not much coming out the next couple of weeks,
yeah.
COVID cases have come down pretty considerably. I think people are kind of itching to go to the movies. I mean, like Uncharted did well, and that reviewed really poorly, so I can't imagine this wouldn't do well.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet, so, I gotta
I
try and
haven't
see
seen
that
it
as
either.
well,
Yeah.
but, um,
I liked the
yeah,
game.
yeah, I'm just more stoked to see this than Uncharted,
Oh yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
But
Everyone should go see this if they're comfortable seeing it in the theater.
right, yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I think that'll do it for us for now. Because I definitely want to talk spoilers once I've
Yes,
seen
we
it.
will do that.
So, tune into the next video. Probably, okay, we'll probably record it sometime this weekend, maybe, and
Yep.
then, we'll post it like Monday morning. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking heavy, heavy spoilers, so you won't want to miss it. And if you're new here, like, subscribe, share, and all that fun stuff. And we'll see you on the next video. Cheers, everyone.